Van Persie with an early run, he's onside this time! It's 1-1! Andre Schürrle, it's 7! It's Mario Götze! What a goal! What a goal to win a World Cup!
Hello again and welcome to the Beermat World Cup podcast. Getting to you the World Cup action and my immediate thoughts for whatever they may be worth. Hashtag lots of dollars. We have an eventful day to get through, but we're going to change things up a little. Normally we go from chronological order, the first games of the day to the last games of the day. We're going to switch this up this time just because of the implications, as it were, in the happenings. So tonight's games, the games that have just finished. Serbia 0, Brazil 2, Switzerland 2, Costa Rica 2. Now, the game with the most goals, the game with, potentially something on the line. Yeah, interesting, 4 goals. But it was just a case of, could Costa Rica become the one team that hadn't scored prior to today? Could they complete the full set? I'm not sure how many times it's happened, actually, so that's fairly impressive. But they did, they managed to get the goal. I've seen the highlights, I've seen the goals. There's not really too much to gather from this game because of the fact that Switzerland just do what Switzerland do, which is just about enough to get through. Costa Rica are... it's no great shame for them. I think they'll be disappointed in the sense that they've been in most of these games. But I think what is going to happen for them to progress is exactly what happened in 2014. Circumstances have to sort of meet them halfway, as opposed to the talent level will go up so far, and then it almost literally is just fate has to meet the other halfway, because they faced a terribly managed England side that was just terribly managed, a Uruguay side that wasn't the same as it was and had a half-fit Suarez. That was enough to get through in the end, and an Italy side that was just in disarray. And so this time around, a Brazil side that wasn't great, but was enough to do the job. Quite literally just enough to do the job against Costa Rica. Switzerland, deceptively stronger than you think. I think with both Switzerland and Costa Rica, in fact, their approach is universal. Switzerland will play the same way against Costa Rica as against Brazil, and so will Costa Rica. It's that level of quality that Switzerland have, but yet aren't able to bridge a gap further. And the same with Costa Rica, but on a lower down level. They just flood the midfield a bit more, they just flood the defence a bit more. With Switzerland, they do the same, but they've got the players to attack on the counter. And to be fair to them, they did when they played Brazil. And then as far as Serbia are concerned, they're a bit of a wild card in this. And the game for Costa Rica against them was just a solid 1-0 by Serbia. So it is what it is for them. And Switzerland move on to the next round, where I'm sure they're going to entertain us. Yeah. The other game in the group, Brazil managing to, after the last few games, after the last few groups that we've seen, including the one earlier today, it's important to notice that how, in spite of the fact of how poorly Brazil have performed, there was no late drama necessary for them to get through. This is as professional a performance as Brazil have put in for a while. But I do think even that's circumstantial. I think once the second goes in, Serbia have to win this to have any chance of going through. It's a dead game for a good 20 minutes. And I am actually a little bit annoyed, aggrieved with Brazil trying to pull out the tricks at 2-0 with 20 to go. Because that's not how you've been for 3 games. You've been pedestrian. You've been potentially underestimating your opponents. You've been dire at times. That first half an hour against Switzerland aside, and it's really interesting actually how they've gone from a side that I really, really rated to a side that I've really I'm almost angered by. And I think a lot of that is the makeup of the side in general, and by that I just simply mean they need to play Firmino. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be impartial, I'm trying to offer some sort of even remote insight to at least what I'm seeing, but at the end of the day it just comes down to the fact that they're not playing Firmino, and that annoys me. And also Neymar is really doing my head in now. It's impressive. I'm normally someone that doesn't go up for this sort of old man, oh, what is this guy? He's all flicks and tricks and he can't do it. He's not got the passion or the heart, and he dives too much even though he's being kicked 50,000 times. I'm not normally one that goes for that. I don't fish in that pool, but man, some of the stuff he's doing, Honestly, it's interesting to see, actually, because you try and put yourself in his shoes. If you're one of the, I'm going to be blanket here and say best 5 players in the world, right? He knows this, his teammates know this, his opponents know this, right? So first and foremost, you're actually going to receive, quote-unquote, special attention. And certainly against Switzerland, he did that. He got fouled more in that game than I think the entirety of most Premier League sides the whole season. So what then it comes down to for me is, what is your attitude to that? How are you going to combat and how are you going to deal with the responsibility of being that guy because you are that guy? And for me, it seems like Neymar is trying far too hard. And everyone can complain, and me included in this, about the theatrics. It's very clear that his decision making is, he's putting the whole thing on his back in that sense. And he's going to try and win free kicks and get this and get that. But the thing is that, like, I don't know if the refereeing standard is massively different to this World Cup to France. But none of them seem to be having any of it. And I think he'd be much better served. Instead of just going, we're going to break this game down into a little 5-minute chunk. We can get some free kick specialists on the ball, or we can try and create some space for someone else. Just play football, for the love of God. Get up off the floor. I understand that, like, for certain teams, if he had a bunch of bombs around him, I'd completely get it. Because what else are you going to do? You can't run around everyone by yourself all the time. And there is an element of that in his play as well. But he's got some good players around him. So he doesn't need to break up the play constantly. It feels like it slows down whenever it goes near him. And maybe that's due to the fact that, like, whenever it goes near him, there's 4 or 5 people in and around him. So it's a difficult thing for him to get right. As far as Serbia are concerned, I wonder, because there's so much in the way of analysis and so much in the way of definitive, terrible or amazing, best thing ever, worst thing ever. Sometimes we forget that there are 2 sides playing football. One side is generally better than the other, even if it's marginal. And in this case, one side is better than the other. Serbia did well to bridge the gap, but once the goal goes in, there's no pressure on Brazil. The big thing about this was going to be, how would they react if they went a goal down? And it felt to me like they were trying to play, first of all, for 0-0 on 70, 75. It wasn't like they were going all out, and I respect that. I've got no problem with that, because why would you get into a battle like that with Brazil? But there wasn't really that much of a goal threat up until the point where there was a 10-minute period and they sustained the pressure. And at any point, this is the problem with trying to build pressure against a good side, at any point it can go. Any misplaced pass, any shot or wrong decision, it all goes out the window. And Serbia did well for a good solid 5-10 minutes, pushed them back and recycle the ball over and over. And the thing they have in their advantage in their locker is they have the players to deliver in Kolarov, they have the midfield to push them back, and they have someone, an aerial threat in Mitrovic. Like, they've got the pieces in and around there, and I've forgotten some names, but to be honest with you, I probably can't pronounce them. And then Mitrovic gets that one chance. I'm struggling to say, like, how much he should score, or he should at least work the keeper, because I think the keeper was becoming more and more under pressure, or visibly at least stressed, and some of his decision making got a little bit, oh hello, what's going on here? But he was never tested, like, to the point of, oh, they're definitely going to score now. So if Mitrovic does take that chance, different game. What I would say is, I think Serbia did everything they could have done. They're not going to look back at this tournament and think about the Brazil game. They're going to look back at this tournament and think about the Switzerland game and that penalty that wasn't. To the point where I believe the commentators were making a point of saying some politician in Serbia was talking about a grave injustice. And to be honest with you, it was a bad call. It should have been reviewed. It should have been a penalty. So I have sympathies with them in that regard. But it is Brazil and Switzerland that go through, unfortunately for them. Right, in the earlier games in Group F, we had a scenario that played out. The first 45 minutes was fairly tense, shall we say. We've seen in a lot of the group stage games the idea that, like, goals, action, all this, all that. As we get to this stage in the tournament, things are beginning to sort of slow down. We had the first 0-0. Teams and players are playing for specific spots rather than just the generic, yeah, we want points. They know what they're doing and they know how they have to achieve it. You win or you're out. You win because you want to get top spot, etc. Mexico 0, Sweden 3, and South Korea 2, Germany 0. What a day. What a collection of results. Again, this group stage is proving to be phenomenal. As far as Mexico go, they're through, but they could have been one of only 3 teams, I think, to have got 6 points at the first 2 games and not gone through. That would have been an absolute disaster. And a lot will be said about Germany and what they did or didn't do. But Germany scoring that late goal against Sweden, if that doesn't go in, this game does not finish 3-0. Mexico would be safe. Mexico would not have the chance to collapse because Sweden, and then this would play out as a draw. It's interesting that while Germany haven't gone through, Toni Kroos may still have affected Mexico in this way. So, as far as Sweden are concerned, I am absolutely delighted for the fact that they got through. Zlatan gives his jaw in. Before the tournament, we were all talking about the fact that, oh, he's definitely coming back. He hasn't, and they've looked so much better for it. I am well on board for a team over an individual, especially when that individual is so individual. Let him do his credit card adverts. Sweden march on, and there are some interesting games lined up for them. Now, the big shock, everything result that will be replayed over and over. Germany, in the last World Cup, shocked the world by dumping the hosts out in humiliating fashion. Their official Twitter account, I believe, responded to this result with a 280 character ha 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 ha, which I'm going to suggest the wounds aren't fully healed there. I was really well up for Germany and Brazil playing in the second round actually as well. South Korea, to their credit, played their part in this. They had an outside chance of going through, but even when it looked like there was nothing to play for in the latter stages of this game, as it goes on, they still played the part. They still had chances on the break, and I think what you have seen in this game actually is that as Germany got increasingly desperate and South Korea did break, you can sort of see why South Korea are in the position they're in, because their decision making wasn't great on the break. They could have won this by a lot more. Germany, I mean, what can be said? What will be said? What already has been said? There are so many factors that have gone into this. I really don't think the Sane thing makes that much of a difference. I think for me the worry is a defence that looks all at sea. The question of whether to bring Neuer in over to Stegen and his fitness, I'm not sure about that. I mean, obviously he gets caught so far upfield for the second goal, which is what he does, that he may as well be on the plane going back already. Like, I think he was at the airport. That's why they scored, because he was already there. And actually, there is a quick shout out for the VAR in as much as it's been lambasted over the last few days, and as much as, yeah, on paper it didn't matter too much because this finished 2-0, the first South Korea goal, if that gets ruled out in real time and Germany go up the other end and win 1-0, then what you've got is an actual case of a team going through that shouldn't have. So just food for thought there on the it's the worst thing we've ever seen camp. But yeah, it's funny, even in elimination, even in humiliation, I still am reluctant to pile in on them, because I'm still going with that stereotype of they'll be back and a lot of decisions that were poorly made in this tournament will be rectified. Joachim Low probably won't be in the job. The squad will be overhauled. Thomas Muller, man, looked like a combination of the worst Emil Heskey I've ever seen. And do you know what, actually? Thomas Muller looked like the Liverpool strike force of 14-15, consisting of Mario Balotelli, Ricky Lambert and Fabio Borini, who got 0 goals, I think, between them that season. That's what it felt like. He felt like the personification of those three, of that strike force, as you will. And he's looked like that most of the tournament. It's quite poor on his part, and, you know, like, he won't be there. They'll come again. They've got the players to come through, and they've got players coming through. It's not quite as root and branch review needing as the people are suggesting, and people are laughably talking about the whole idea of, oh yeah, they need to base all their up-and-coming prospects on England, which is effectively pin all your hopes on a striker that inexplicably scores loads of goals. Yeah, you can find them everywhere. It's a result that stuns world football, and I am fascinated to see now, because the way the draw's panning out, you've got on one side of the draw quite a lot of heavy hitters, and on the other side of the draw Spain and Brazil, which are heavy hitters. It's just the fact of one side looks more intriguing than another, and effectively one of England, Belgium, Sweden, Switzerland, Japan, Colombia or Senegal will be in a semi-final. So that's taster, yeah, and we'll see how that goes. And not only that, we'll see how it goes for England tomorrow in the ultimate lose-off of all time. If you think the games were exciting when everyone's trying to win, I'm interested to see what happens for England-Belgium when teams actually start trying to actively lose. Look up the 1994 Caribbean Cup qualification process for how exciting that can be.